over all. A-L-L, all, everything, everything. It's so easy for us to miss that. It's what we need to be reminded when you come here to the church, you gather with the body, and you remember, right, how good and pleasant it is for the brethren to dwell in unity, right? How important it is for us to dwell here. You may be seated. So glad to have you with us in the house. Thank you, worship team. As always, Steve, you have to be tired. You had a lot of singing today. I mean, everybody did, but you're leading all those songs, right? How you feeling? Some water. Love it, love it. Well, what is happening for the rest of this meeting? I'll tell you. I have a couple of people that are going to be coming up, and we're going to be having a conversation about what is going on in the world and how it relates to biblical prophecy, what the Bible has to say. Did you know that a little over a quarter of the Bible is biblical prophecy, but yet in over 90% of the churches around the world, you won't hear anything. Scan any details about what the Bible has to say about the end days. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at the world around us today and realize that things are really happening. At breakneck speed, they're happening. Before I bring them up, though, I would be remiss if I didn't, this morning, I kind of came up, I said, I have to say something about this. Last night, my parents and I, we went to see thank you. They're going to put it up here now, the Jesus Revolution movie. So there were two Christian movies. We watched one on Friday night. We had a great turnout in here. For those people that were here on Friday night, we had a Left Behind movie. However you feel about those books and movies, it was great for everyone to come in here and gather and watch that movie. But I don't know. This movie, for me, the Jesus Revolution, it will not be in the movie theater long because it's a Christian movie. That's just the nature of what happens. It may be in there for 2 weeks. It is arguably the best Christian movie that I've seen. Production-wise, it is phenomenal. It is not the entire story of the Jesus movement. My mom came in, she's talking to me this morning, giving me more pieces. Did you know this? Did you know that? I'm like, I know, I get it. I get where you're coming from. It's a story that you need to run and bring your families, your kids. Like I told Megan, who's not here this morning, she got back late, traveling, whatever. But I said, we're going to see the movie before it leaves. I looked at Island 16, Stony Brook. I don't see any shows for after like Wednesday. So you need to, I don't know, it doesn't mean that it won't be shown, but as of now, I didn't see any times. So you need to get out and support this movie. It's amazing in so many different ways. Bring some Kleenex too. I don't know. I cry a lot, but multiple times I'm like wiping my, tears from my eyes. It brought me to Jesus, and the Kelsey Grammars. It's just amazing. So I had to say something about that. Go out and watch it. It's so rare that you see a film on this level. You forget you're watching a Christian movie, and a lot of times I can't say that, right? You know what I mean? Am I right? Is that all right? Is that fair to say? Okay. All right. With that, we are now I'm going to ask Ted Patrone, John, Naeem, they're going to come up, and we are, as they're setting up, I'll set the table as you're all getting situated up here. We are, yes, they're ready. Listen, a lot of prep, there's a lot of prep that goes into these meetings. Whether you think it or not, whatever, I don't know if you think anything about it, but the children need to leave too, so you can make your way out. You're going to head out there. Thank you for all the help. And as they're getting situated, I just want to read something. We call this the Sunday Times prophecy updates, just looking again. We haven't done one of these in a while, but I want to start here with Jesus' words in Matthew 24, the Olivet Discourse. And I'm going to read you a few verses. Starting in verse 3, this is what Jesus said. He's talking to his disciples. He said, now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, right, Matthew writing now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately saying, tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Jesus answered and said to them, take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Okay. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation. And that's interesting when you look at the original Greek, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you. Oh, that's nice. And you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended. Many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. You seeing that? The love of many growing cold? I mean, it's there. So why do we do these? I'm setting this as the context. This is to give us an understanding of being aware of the deception that is really out there, and to guard our hearts, right, as a body, so that we would be aware. This is not something we ever want you to walk out when we do these panels, that you walk out and you feel doom and gloom. Things are not falling apart. They're falling into place. You have to remember that. They're falling into place. The story that God is telling, it may look like, well, it looks like evil is winning. It looks like darkness is winning. And we're going to talk about some of that. But it's not. These are the things. God knows what he's doing. He is on the throne. So we want you, and we're connecting this to the message that we've been hearing. We don't have to have fear and anxiety as we leave this place, right? You have another life that lives on the inside of you. It's tapping into that life. And the feelings of fear and, I don't know, the uncertainty and the doubt, it's tapping into that life of Christ that is on the inside of us. Are you ready, gents? Yeah? All right. Well, you want to it was hard, right? Because there's nothing going on in the world. Like, it's pretty cool. Right. Hard to, it was really hard to find topics. They're looking at people's faces. They don't know if we're kidding. Right? Where are you? Are you living in America right now and seeing what's happening on the world stage, the geopolitical strife, things that are happening in the economy, things that are happening, Naeem? Let's start with the Grammys. How about the Grammys? Anybody watch, what was that reaction? Did anybody watch the Grammys this year? There wasn't really anything eventful that happened. It was a God-honoring event, right, in many ways? No. All right, well, let's start here. If you didn't, if you weren't aware, and this was all over the news a couple of weeks ago, and I was doing research because I didn't know much about these individuals. Maybe you all did, but this I thought was really interesting. These two entertainers, they Unholy, this song, and they had this. Go ahead, Naeem. Take it. You start. What were your thoughts on that, and tie it into the culture and our kids? And
so, well, how many people know about the event? If you didn't watch it, know what we're talking about. All right. So Sam Smith is an openly gay entertainer. I don't know if he's identifying that way anymore.
Non-binary.
Non-binary now, and the other person's transgender. Which, okay, great, whatever. Whatever. We'll leave it at that. The event was basically...
You sure you don't want to talk about that? Oh,
well,
okay,
exactly.
I thought of it too. I'm like, it's like a loaded
it's
topic.
Loaded.
Yeah,
and so what we're seeing in the culture really right now is this tearing down of anything, of any moral fiber or value. And so, because we could look at the event and call it exactly what everybody called it, which they said was devil worship and all that other stuff. Even the CEOs, CBS were ready to worship. They deleted their tweet about the whole event leading up to it. They said, we're ready to worship, and then when it got out, they deleted the tweet. And again, I don't want to speak speculatively, but what we do see across the board is we see this rebellion against anything that is godly, anything that is in God's order across the board. And now it's fluid, right? So you can't even gravitate to one thing to say, well, this is what it is anymore. Now it's open across the board. And one of the things that you had said in the beginning was the spirit of offense, right? And so that spirit of offense You can be offended by, well, I didn't even know that you changed your mind. How am I supposed to know that? And we'll get into some of the Peterson stuff, but one of the comments, a very prominent person in our culture now, Jordan Peterson, he just talks about, they want to now control how you think. It's not enough to just do whatever it is they want. Now you have to think and believe the way that the world says you're supposed to think and believe. And if you don't, then you're a racist or whatever.
That's good. You guys want to comment on that?
I'll just say one thing, because I think there's a picture here that it just struck me, because I used to always remember this. Some of you around my age remember growing up, that the lyrics, the parental guidance, right? Advisory on the music, right? Well, that wasn't always the case. A lot of you remember that was new. And that I remember in the 80s, of all people, Tipper Gore, Al Gore's wife, was the one that pushed that. And I remember it being a thing, and parents were asking for this, and it kind of happened, because they used to just tell you, well, just turn the channel, like, what's the point, like, just, it's not your problem, just don't listen to it. Well, that doesn't work anymore, right? But I want to show you that, because I want to say, like, that was like the 80s, and this is where we are now, and you can see the timeline, and how the continuum is, the devil's always subtle, and with Matthew, you saw the word deceive. There's so much deception, and it's never like 10 steps at a time, and like, oh my gosh, what is this? It's
gradual.
Like, it's this,
He's
and we've
always
been seeing
gradual.
this since
It's
the
how the enemy
60s and the 70s, and even with the Jesus movement,
Yeah.
it kind of, took us in a different direction, which was awesome, but it just keeps happening and happening. And now, the only thing I'd say about the Grammys now is, look, the devil, there's no, like, he knows his time is short. Okay, so let's be happy about that, because he is out in the open. There is no hiding it anymore. I mean, your kids are seeing this stuff. Everybody knows what's going on. And it's really, in some ways, it's good in the sense that you got to pick a side. And it's a lot easier to see what side you're on now than maybe before. So
That's good.
Some of the ways for the picking aside, but also, John, for the kids, when we were growing up, we didn't have smartphones.
Yeah.
We didn't have laptops or computers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have music. We had a Walkman. You knew we were listening to a Walkman, right? You had to go out and buy the cassette.
it took like an hour to fast forward to the next song.
Exactly.
Oh, I hated
Exactly.
that. It was the worst.
Where nowadays, and my wife and I, we talk about this often with our, because we've got 3 teenagers. It's the whole thing. Thank you. But you realize that my voice in their life is so minimal compared to what they see on social media, what they're hearing in school, what they're talking to their friends about. So as intentional as we can be with our kids, but also not even just showing them things, but also showing them what the world is offering and saying, well, what do you think about that? Digging into the questions, like, where does that lead? And just trying to be as intentional as I can in the times that we're living in.
It's minimal, but it's vital, and it's important, because, when we're talking about our kids with this issue, they see you, they watch you, they trust you, they know you. So if you're sending a different message, then they're going to say, well, then none of this matters. But if you're telling them your weight, even though you're right, you're overwhelmed by the media and what's out there and everything they're hearing, but if we as parents take a stand, that little bit can be magnified. And then we just trust that the Lord will do that.
The elder statesman, do you want to say something? Your reticence over there. I didn't know what was happening inside your mind.
Is it He's got all his albums.
I don't even want to touch that, but that video you sent, Pastor Hibbs,
Yes. Yeah.
brilliant. I'm going to go tangent a little bit, but our founding fathers were so smart. They wanted to keep the power away from the cities, because that's where people get together and they have problems and they start riots, and they said, okay, we have to take the Electoral College and spread out the power. This new technology age we're in, right? This is the whole story of histories. The first cities were by rivers, then by railroads, then by train tracks, highways, and now virtual cities. And you can't stop it. And so the world is one big city. We are Babel. This is that video that he sent. Yeah. It was the perfect. I didn't realize that about it. Some of these guys that can bring out the things you read in Scripture and they relate it to the times, brilliant. It was just brilliant. It opened my eyes a lot to what's going on. This is just one microcosm of people getting together too much and communicating too much.
Yeah. I was just pointing over there to John Morton. He had sent me that video yesterday, and I listened to it, and that's why I thought it was
Brilliant.
really good.
Those guys, I
share
love it.
with
I'm
you.
on top of that forever, those guys.
Yeah, that was excellent. what was I going to say? I'm going to throw a quote up now. I think it really ties in with, yeah, I can't really. Hey, listen, I had to put a picture up that really nails, right, what happened. It's real, right? This is a quote I want us to see, though. What do we do with things of the world? We're touching things in the world and systems. This is from Watchman Nee, and there's no way I can read that from here, so I'm going to pull it up on my phone. But I love, no way, no shot. What? You have glasses on, and yeah. All right, here we go. You're the youngest. It's like a reading exam. I feel like I'm like a doctor's office right now. Anybody else? Any other comments from the audience out there about my vision?
Say ah.
Well, with my oh gosh.
Spiritual vision's good.
Yeah. Good point. So Watchman, this is in a book, Love Not the World. He said, politics, education, literature, science, art, law, commerce, music. Such are the things that constitute the cosmos, the world. And these are the things that we meet daily. Subtract them and the world as a coherent system ceases to be. In studying the history of mankind, we have to acknowledge marked progress in each of these departments. The question, however, is, in what direction is this progress tending? What is the ultimate goal of all this development? At the end, John tells us, the Antichrist will rise and will set up his own kingdom in this world. Gives the scripture references in 1 John, 2 John, and then Revelation. And then he goes on to say, it is the direction, let me put it so you can see it. It is the direction of this world's advance. Satan is utilizing the material world, the men of the world, the things that are in the world to head everything up eventually in the kingdom of Antichrist. At that hour, the world system will have reached its zenith. And at that hour, every unit of it will be revealed to be anti-Christian. What would you guys say to this quote? You had some time maybe to look at. Is there anything you would like to add to what he is saying about the things of the world and the things that we touch in the world? Pastor Linda said to us, he says it somewhere, he doesn't use the exact word, but it's like dynamite. Be very careful what you're touching in this world. What would you guys say to that?
Can you go back to the first part of the slide?
Sure.
So those, that. Yeah, so politics, anything but him. Politics, education, literature, science, art, law, commerce, music, right? These are all things, medicine, these are all wonderful things.
Yeah, good.
But when they become the object of all of our devotion, like anything else, so you talk to somebody, I'm a politician, I'm an educator or a teacher, I write books, I'm a scientist, I'm an artist, I'm a lawyer. And we have all these I ams that we have gravitated and made ourselves and said, well, this is what I am. This is how I identify, whether you want to call it or not. Or we clothe ourselves with all these things, and we make them some sort of blanket that tries to keep us warm that doesn't. And then what he's saying here at the end is that at the end of the day, all of that's falling away. That was not the point. Those are beautiful things. It's like going out into the woods and worshiping trees. Like, no, thank you, God, for these wonderful trees. There's a difference between the two things. Yeah. And I think that one of the things that we see in this world is we've made those things pillars of what we now stand on top of.
Yeah, and I think as we look at the world, right, you know, the Bible talks about this world passing away, and there's a new earth, a new Jerusalem, right? We talk about that. And I just think that, we just have to realize that all this stuff is just like our bodies, right? I want to tie it back to the message we've been hearing in this place, because we're body, soul, and spirit, but we, kind of flip the triangle, right? And we kind of think more about our bodily and emotions and forget that we're spirit when we're spirit first, right? And so your spirit's eternal, right? So that's not deteriorating, but yet we focus on the things that are deteriorating more than that. And that's kind of part of the message we've been hearing here. And this is a perfect example of that. And the last thing I just want to say is the next slide. To me, we spend too much time, if you're into Bible prophecy, like a lot of us are, and you're talking about, Antichrist, whatever. I love that Watchman Nee was one of the only people I remember early days that talked about this. It's an Antichrist system. it's, we're focused too much on
the air
where's
we
the
breathe.
person.
Yeah.
Where's that one person that's going to change everything? Guess what? While we've been looking for that person, it's been happening at exponential rates forever and ever.
Prince of the air,
It's
yeah.
all heading to a climax because when we get to the end, there's a battle of good and evil. And this is the evil system, and it's anti-Christian, and it's antichrist. And so when you look at a Hitler or you look at anybody through the ages, well, maybe that was the antichrist. Well, yeah, it kind of was. It was an example of all the system of the antichrist winding its way to one end, and God's got another plan winding to another end.
That's good. Very good. I'm gonna.
This is just an end result of Adam and Eve's decision in the garden to break away from God and to, instead of eating from the tree of life, to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And the problem is, we can get into this with ChatGPT, is there's become this huge gap now between knowledge and wisdom. And knowledge without wisdom is very dangerous, and this is where we're going. There's people are going to be, well, many of us will be dumbed down by ChatGPT, but people will get smarter, there'll be more information out there, but to a certain extent, it is, you're right, the cosmos is the world, right? It's the
Yeah.
system, as you say. And even the people, like, there's a lot of us talk about the World Economic Forum and such. Some of these people, they think they're doing good for you, right? Let's get, one guy was like, this Jesus was just fake news, I saw one of the top guys, and he's saying, we need to educate the world because we will do better. Again, I go back to Babel all the time. We have become a world of Babel, and we're building a system that says, Psalm 2, we don't need God. Why do the nations rage? David wrote it way back then. Nothing's changed, just we have iPhones. That's what's different.
Hey, did you find it really interesting, the Rick Warren piece? That I had no idea he attended the World Economic Forum.
Stupefied that he was
I
there.
was, yeah, I had the same reaction.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not disparaging him,
No,
but he's
maybe-
one of the biggest
Maybe the
names
Lord
in the,
told him
you
to
know,
go, and I don't know, but-
in the Western church. I was appalled and intrigued by that.
Just a
Go
quick
ahead.
comment to what you guys just said. The other part to it is it's going to be very seductive. It's going to look good. It's going
Yeah.
to look
Yeah.
moral and right and ethical. Like they're going to present it that like you could just say, oh, it's evil. Why would I do that? It's going to look and it's going to be like Beyond Meat.
Some of it's overt, like we
Yeah.
saw in the last slide, and a lot of it's not.
Well,
Yeah.
the verse you posted in Matthew, it uses the word deceive. And, I just was thinking about, just the deception is everywhere, right? Like, just look at it this way. Think of the challenge that we all have now to just figure out what the word news means. Like, you don't even know what to think anymore. Like, you get something now and you go, well, I don't know, maybe this is real, maybe, and we've seen the power of the media right now. Like, if they decide they don't want to cover a topic, you got to really work hard to get some info on your own, right? And then you go, well, I'm digging around. I don't know, maybe this is right, maybe. So now you're walking around like,
We didn't really even get into it, but
Yeah.
the train incident in Ohio, and
yeah, but that's what I'm
I'm
saying. but,
laughing like Aaron
you
Brockovich.
pick up a
is-
topic, you get 8
It's in
different
Ohio.
views.
It's unbelievable.
And then you say to and then the Bible says at these end times, people will be deceived, even the elect may be deceived. And you think to yourself, of course, because we're ripe. If you're not, like James said, 25% of the Bible is prophecy. Like if you're not just, and that's part of our goal, is to just say, hey, let's just be awake. Like let's just stay awake, keep our eyes open. We know where this is going, right? But let's just stay awake because it's easy to get deceived right now.
All right, let's move. I'm going to turn.
Can I just
You wanted to say something? Go ahead.
Something that came up this morning on the string. The greatest invention, as I'm concerned, is religion. Because you feel, we're watching Wahlberg and
Oh,
the guys, and they're talking about being a good person, right? And it's the perfect artificial intelligence we talked about with the
Looks
enemy,
good,
right?
sounds
You
good,
feel good through life. You're working your way to heaven, but it's to no avail in the end, because it's all. What was the first sin in the universe? It wasn't Adam and Eve. It was Satan in heaven saying, "I will lift myself up," and that's what's happening now to the human race. We're just copying it.
All right, let's turn our attention now to where the epicenter of biblical prophecy, that's Israel, right? Let's look at Jerusalem, right? The apple of God's eye. his chosen people. That's where we, as Christians, that's where we need to look. So what is happening for maybe for those people in here? And you see, we have a lot of issues in the Middle East with Israel and especially Iran, right? And them developing nuclear proliferation. And their uranium enrichment, they're at what, about 84%, 86%, differing numbers on that. We don't know, but they're close, right? So what is happening? What could we say to that and how it pertains to biblical prophecy? There's a lot of differing opinions about, is this going to be, and we've talked about this in Ezekiel, the Gog and Magog war, but where does all this fall in line? Because a lot has been said, and you need to comment on where you were a couple of weeks ago and the conversation that you had. It would be great, whatever you are free to share about this. But so where do things stand right now? What do you guys see?
I just want to start out with something in my head before I forget. I write notes because I'm the oldest here, and if I don't write them down, I forget.
You have the least amount of brain cells,
So,
you're saying?
Yes, exactly. Ask my wife. See, now I forgot it.
Sorry.
Here's my prediction.
Check your notes.
Listen, I'm somebody who voted for Trump, but I'm not voting for him again. So now you know where I stand politically. But if President Trump got reelected, there'd be no Ukraine war, and Israel would have already attacked Iran and blew out their nuclear reactors, for sure. So James saying, I have a good friend who's Jewish. He's, I went to his daughter's wedding. She was in the IDF, the Israeli army, and I've met a lot of generals in the army through this guy, and they talk, and he came into the city, and it was a private dinner, and he scared the heck out of me because he was saying things are so bad on the ground, just outside the border. Everything is Hezbollah, whether it's the Syrian side, the Lebanon side, they're all aiming to get Israel. And they asked him at the end, what are we going to do? And he really kind of stopped and he said, he didn't want to answer, but it was a small group. My son Danny and I were probably the only two goyim there, non-Jews. And he said, we're going to have to take it out. So the Ukraine war gets all the headlines, and it should because it's a disaster. But saints, Israel in the next year or two, I think it says here in the next 3 years, they're hoping for a more conservative election. If they can hold on to the next president or Congress, they'll go in when they have the backing of the states. But we feel now that Israel doesn't feel they have the backing of the states, so they won't go attack. Because they'll be on their own because all the other countries in the Middle East will attack them. So it's a pretty serious, like I said, the Ukraine war is a problem. We can talk about that a lot. But the real issue to me is, listen, Iran's been on record for saying, we're going to take out Israel. We're just going to take it out. Numerous times. It's not like there was a mistake. Not like Biden said something.
Yeah, raise them
the
to the
State
ground.
Department brought it back.
Tel
Nobody
Aviv.
brought back those statements. So it's a game changer. And it's probably coming soon. So my bent on the rapture, we talked about it the other day. I go from, it's coming, like this is coming. And then I pull back and I say, forget about it. It's not coming. It's not going to come in my lifetime. But when you look around today, and like being on a jury, any reasonable person would have to say, things are out of control right now. I mean, we're going somewhere. If it's not the rapture, it's somewhere very bad as a world. So there's so many, because in business, I have to follow everything around the world to a certain extent to see how it affects transportation. But anyway, there's so many bad levers you can flip in a row that will fall in a domino that things can change overnight very quickly, even before something like that happens. Because this idiot in North Korea can throw a few things out there. If he threw a nuke out there 10 years ago, it wouldn't have anything. But the atmosphere is charged. One spark can light everything, just like World War I.
That's good. No, go ahead. You want to say anything on that?
No, the only thing I was going to compare that to is the times we live in now. You guys know about the doomsday clock or whatever, just these people
I
that
threw it on
track
the list. I didn't put a slide
sorry.
up. Yeah, no, I didn't put a slide up. But
we've moved to the closest of midnight than we've ever
we'll tell
been.
them what that is. Like, yeah.
It's a people, experts that kind of look at the world events, and then they, midnight is kind of the 0 hour of, everything's like nuclear war or whatever. And, they kind of inch it away and forward based on events, and we're closer to that than we've ever been before. And I just think it's, I lost where I was going, but I think it was just a picture of just kind of the days we live in right now. I mean, it's a powder keg out there, and like Ted said, anything could set it off. I mean, every circumstance, every war that's going on. I mean, this Ukraine thing. I heard something this week that said because the whole globalism thing. This is the one I think I want to say. You mentioned Trump. I think in a lot of ways for the church, if you think back, there was that 4-year window. There was the good thing I think was that he was ordained for that time to expose a lot of things. But I do think, and I think you may agree with me if you think back now because we're a couple of years in, and he didn't win, right? So now it's maybe God wasn't in it. Think about how much more complacent the church would be. Because I think we were getting really complacent thinking, we're saved now. We got this guy, and he's going to change everything. We have to remember as the church, there's a lot of people running around talking about, we could talk about revival, whatever, and what that word means, but changing our culture, in my mind, that's not the goal of a Christian. I mean, it's good. We need to affect where we live, right? Affect the people in your life, show them Christ through you, but this idea that we're going to metamorphosize and turn everybody into this Christian culture, I think it's a red herring. I think it's taking us all in the wrong road.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, when Jesus said, "You'll be my witnesses in Judea and Samaria, and then
Ends of the earth,
Jerusalem, and
yeah.
then Judea and Samaria, and then most parts of the world," that's the problem with us Christians. We're sitting in Jerusalem, and we're wanting to go to uttermost parts in the world, but we haven't won victory in our life over Jerusalem, in our inside, in our family, and our neighbors. We want to go to the Ukraine and Turkey and minister to those people
That's a good
before
point,
we've won
yeah.
locally. And I think, to me, I don't think the Lord lets you go out there locally and be a success until you've won the battle at home, which is the hardest
If you
battle.
want to change the world, change your world.
And what's really cool, what's cool about what you just said is our mindset is that, there's going to be churches in all these other places. And that's not necessarily what it's going to be. Because we're living in an age right now where you're able actually to share your own life with people on social media. The conversion isn't happening building by building. It's happening soul by soul. And with the message that we're hearing right now, we're hearing this message that's coming through saying, hey, all this stuff, this religion that the world is propagating, saying that this is what looks like a Christian, is rubbish. You want your Christian life, you want your Christian walk? Well, that's going to come with you doing business with the Lord and allowing Him to change your life. And in changing your life, everybody that's in your sphere of influence is going to be affected because they're going to be watching you. It's going to affect your home. If you're a social media or influencer, it's going to affect your feeds. And so this walk that we're talking about, we don't even have a way to quantify what it's supposed to look like because it's not something we're supposed to be looking at and following with our eyes and saying, no, it's His Spirit, and we're just trying to stay there. And everything we're talking about today, I was going to say this with the Ukraine thing, but everything that we're talking about today is like this loud child yelling, look at me, look at me, look at me. Or somebody coming in and breaking stuff. Look at this, look at this, look at this. Everything is noise, trying to create chaos in our own spirit. And it's like, whoa. What we come to church from, what we're doing here today, what we're talking about is like, listen, this is what's going on in the world. Be not afraid. Fasten your eyes on the Lord Jesus Christ.
That's good, Neil.
Because
Yeah.
this is the gospel. He told us what's going to happen. So it's kind of like going to a party and you go with a friend, but you don't know everybody in the room, and they tell you, listen, when you see so-and-so, they're going to be loud and obnoxious, and they're going to bring up their new sneakers. Just ignore them. And you walk in, and there they are. It's like, hey, Ted, what's going on? I already got the crib notes on what's happening, what's about to go on. I don't have to get sucked into these places that are only going to steal my time, steal my joy, steal my life. And that's kind of what we're talking about.
That's good. I love how you're both tying it back into what we're talking about and the real message. That's great. Now, move it from there to, if you don't know out there, we've said this before, but it bears repeating. The United States is not in end-time prophecy. And some debatable. Many more scholars than not say we're not. I don't think we are either. everyone's free to have their own opinion on that. But let me put this up. I thought, this is pretty interesting. We recently, I don't know if you saw this in the past couple of weeks, we had a 4-star general come out, obviously well-respected, warning of war with China in 2025. So here we are in the beginning of 2023, a lot of tension with moving from there in the Middle East and them looking to take over Taiwan, right? And that's something we've mentioned before. What do you guys think of this? What do you make of this? You have a little smirk on your face over there. I know, there's a lot. You don't want to get caught in the weeds,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I'll pull you out if you do.
Okay, good. Let's start out. We're already at war with China.
Good.
There's 5 types of war. Technology war, there's a trade war, geopolitical influence war, an economic war, and then there's a hot war. And I think there's 5 types of hot wars, too. Every one of those ones before the hot war, we're in a war with China. Will we go to the 5th war? I don't know. Will they go for Taiwan? Listen, just like the Ayatollahs in Iran have publicly stated they're going to take out Israel, Xi has said publicly it is his term as prime minister or president, whatever they call him, will be a failure if they don't unite Taiwan and China. If you go to a map in a schoolroom in China, Taiwan is part of China.
His address when he was reelected, that got the largest applause.
So this is another one coming down, right? So just add another lever could go bad with this. Well, we in shipping follow this because there's sanctions on chips, there's sanctions on certain cargoes, and things are going back and forth. I feel like we're in Europe in the 1930s, and even before World War I, but I think most of us understand the 30s better a bit. People were saying, no. I was over in Greece before Putin went in, right? And he put everybody around the border, Ukraine. Only other person in the whole company over there was my boss, who agreed with me. He's going in. And the Europeans still said, no, because they don't have a Christian perspective. Man is basically good. He'll back down, don't worry. We're all fallen, right? You have wars because you want, you don't have. Is it John says that? So James. Oh, we'll do it, James. That's good. I'll get to that one.
Plug. Nice plug.
I just think it's. I'm an optimistic person by nature, but I'm really worried about the next 4 to 5 years. It's a really difficult time. If we can get past that, outside of Christology and end times, where are we? I'm just thinking if we can get past that, we can be in a safer place. But I don't know how we get past that without one war breaking out somewhere, a hot war. And I don't want to go into the debt of our country either. That's another thing.
Yeah.
There's a guy in the back who can speak about that a bit better than me.
I heard somebody put in perspective recently about the wars. So out of World War I came the League of Nations, which was kind of a failure, and then in World War II, you got the United Nations, and World War III is set up to bring in world government. And I thought that was really kind of interesting, this progression.
Albert Einstein said that famous quote that
League of Nations was the first one, which failed.
Woodrow Wilson.
Woodrow Wilson.
We didn't even join, right?
What?
Forget, I don't know.
Einstein said,
You're the history.
I'm not sure what exact weapons they'll use in World War III,
Right.
but I know what they'll use in World War IV.
Yeah.
Clubs and stones.
Right. Well, and a lot of people in this
I never heard
room,
that.
I'll just
That's
say
good.
this, and this is not meant to scare you. This is just to kind of do more cold water to say, be awake and be vigilant, because a lot of you people in the room remember the Cuban Missile Crisis. And a lot of you remember, and you probably remember the fear and whatever you were thinking at that time. We have like 3 Cuban Missile crises right now. Like right now on the verge. You heard Taiwan, you got Iran, and Israel, and of course you got Russia,
Ukraine.
and Ukraine, but Russia and NATO, Russia and U.S. Like this is all intertwined because again, when you get into a global world, everything's connected. It's like when you push on that string, everything moves. So everything's connected now. You can't just say, well, I'll just touch this country over here and nothing else will happen. Everything's affected now.
Wow. Yeah, all right, guys, let's get into it. You mentioned it earlier. We're going to talk about a topic that I don't know how many of you know. How many of you are familiar with what's going on with artificial intelligence? And we'll start with ChatGPT. How many of you, no, you've heard it, at least hear about it in the news,
of it?
know a lot about it? How many of you have accounts?
You've heard
Right?
of AI.
I have
though,
an
right?
account. Hey, listen, I have an account. Yeah, it's really interesting. Well, artificial intelligence is it's here to stay. This is the beginning. This is the tip of the iceberg where all of this is headed. And I'm going to start by showing you a 5-minute clip from Jordan Peterson. Now, mind you, this clip is from 2 months ago. He was interviewed by Joe Rogan. If you know who Joe Rogan is the largest podcast in the world. Now, he brings a lot of great guests on. I don't really approve of a lot of the language on there and some of the crude talk, but he's a really smart guy, very insightful, and the conversations a lot of times, they're great once you get past that. But this is a 5-minute clip from Peterson. We think it's good to set the context for artificial intelligence. And really, again, all of this goes back to how is the enemy going to be using this, the systems that he is behind, right, for what we're going to see ultimately in the future.
Who Jordan Peterson is a little bit.
Go ahead, you get.
I
Take it.
just he's a conservative professor from Canada. He's been thrust into the limelight. I mean, put your thinking cap on because he uses a lot of big words. and
He's
stuff, but
super smart.
He's super
Next level
intelligent,
smart.
but he does get you. He does get you to understand the concepts at whatever level you connect with him at. But
Digestible, yeah.
he's taken on a lot of the cultural stuff that we all feel. He speaks against it, and he's very outspoken. And it seems to be even worse in Canada than it is here in that.
Seems like he's getting closer to coming.
And
to
he is very
faith,
close to,
right? I
if
mean,
not already.
Yeah, I know.
some kind
It's
of-
hard that you can't judge.
I
but
mean, he
it's-
speaks about Christianity.
Yeah.
stuff. Ted talked. The first time I ever heard him, and Ted can plug this. He told me about him like years ago, and he did a thing on Genesis.
yeah.
That,
Amazing.
and this was an unsaved guy. but I mean,
Unbelievable.
you can. That's your thing. but-
Unbelievable.
I would say that if you go on YouTube, they're on YouTube now. His 2-hour talk.
Yeah, they're not easy to listen.
They're not
That's
easy to
not
listen
easy.
to.
to
So you got to
listen
take it. But on Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel and the flood, and that he was not a Christian and got this out of it.
Yeah, you're like,
This
what?
is what he's saying now.
Yeah.
He's close to. I don't know what he's saying, but looks like he's a Christian to most of us because he says he went from an atheist to agnostic to being looks like a Christian and he talked about the Jesus. Anyway, he's just what he can get out of it is beyond anything I've heard, except for people like me and stuff like that, And
All right, let's
think
show
about
this
it.
5-minute clip so you can get a little taste,
ChatGPT,
an appetizer.
AI.
How many of you clap? How many of you know what ChatGPT is? Okay. So, not very many. So I'll tell you what ChatGPT is, just so you know, because you need to know this. And I don't know what sort of technological revolution this is. Gutenberg press level? It's something like that. This is a big deal. So this AI system, it's a general language processing model, was released about a week and a half ago, and I went and interacted with it. It's an AI system, artificial intelligence system. It basically is trained on a massive corpus of spoken or of text. So it's derived its models of the world from the analysis of human speech, essentially. It isn't using real-world data yet, but that will be happening certainly within the next year. So, and ChatGPT analyzes a very large corpus of text, and that corpus is growing all the time. Now, it's already sophisticated enough. I went on to it last week, and I said, okay, some of you know I've written these books, 12 Rules for Life, and then Beyond Order, 12 More Rules, because, you can't have enough rules. And I asked it, this is what I asked it to do. I said, write me an essay that's a 13th rule for Beyond Order, written in a style that combines the King James Bible with the Tao Te Ching. That's pretty difficult to pull off, Any one of those things is hard. The intersection of all three, that's impossible. Well, it wrote it in about 3 seconds, 4 pages long, and it isn't obvious to me, for better or worse, that I would be able to tell that I didn't write it. Right, and okay, and that's pretty impressive, although, maybe not its relationship to what I've written, but the fact that it could do that grammatically perfectly, right? And and it did that too, 3 seconds, and the computer code works. Right, and so, okay, so that's already there. So then a university professor did this, he thought, oh, that's interesting. Any student will be able to write any essay on any topic with ChatGPT. And someone gave it an SAT, by the way, and it scored about as well as the average student in a well-functioning public university. So that's how smart it is. So that's basically an IQ test. He said, write me an essay, gave it a topic, wrote the essay. He said, now grade it. Said if we can automate the students, we should be able to automate the professors too. And so it provided a complete comprehensive analysis of its own essay with grade. It wrote, someone else asked it, write the screenplay and describe the characters for the next $900 million Hollywood blockbuster. So, bang! Plot, characterizations. Then someone else took the descriptions of the actors and said, generate photorealistic computer images for each actor. And all the AI systems can do that. So I'm going to tell you what's going to happen next. This is going to happen this year. So get ready. Okay, so now we have an AI model that can extract a model of the world from the entire corpus of language. All right, and it's smarter than you. And it's going to be a hell of a lot smarter than you in 2 years. So you can get ready for that too. But it's not that smart yet because it's just a humanities professor at the moment. It doesn't test its linguistic knowledge against the real world. That's what a scientist does, right? You come up with a theory that's linguistically predicated, and then you throw it against the world and see if it sticks. And then the world tells you whether or not your linguistic construction is valid. But the new AI systems will be able to extract out patterns from the world itself, from images and so forth, and then be able to test their linguistic constructions against the world, and so they'll practice just like scientists. And the most advanced models are going to use text and image and action as well, because they'll build a model of human action. And so, and all of that's going to come down the pipes within the next year. So hang on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen, because what did my friend Jonathan Pajot say? Giants are going to walk the earth once more. And we're going to live through that. Maybe.
Pretty sobering, right? So if you don't know, yes, this is real. Listen, I was at a faculty meeting last month as a teacher in a school, and my principal got up and said, listen, we have to address the elephant in the room. Kids know about ChatGPT. They're writing essays using this. So if you don't, you worry about plagiarism, you're going to have your kids right in front of you. This is just, listen, this is warm-ups. I know a lot about the topic, different things I do outside of church that I'm very involved. Like, I just see where this is going, and a lot of it is not good. So I want to ask you guys, what do you take from that clip? What do you see? How is this something the enemy is going to be using in these last days, and where can this ultimately
I'll give you a
lead?
small example from me personally.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm somebody who should be good in navigation, right, because I was on ships. And now I use GPS, and I make wrong turns, because I don't think anymore. And that's what it's going to do to us. You don't have to think anymore. I sent that, 2 minutes, let me see if I can do this.
No, go. Yeah, we're good.
So I read, there was an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal. It was Kissinger and a few people. And it was very long, very long. But I was.
How is he still alive?
Yeah, I think
Guy doesn't die.
He's got the picture of Doreen Gray in his.
I can't.
Attic.
I know, he's still going.
So
Sorry.
what they said was, right, this is the opposite of the printing press. The printing press you can then communicate quickly to masses of people. Overnight, not overnight, but overnight for that period of time. Back then you could only talk to a few people, but the printing press, you can write a book and you could communicate with Europe within a month or two. It just completely moved the knowledge base up. This is different. You're bringing all the knowledge to you. If you want to know about teaching, high school in America, you go in, you ask for it. It scours everything written ever on that subject. And word by word, it makes a decision that what's the next most logical word. So it's nothing about the future. It's covering all the information, but it's coming to you, right? So then you have people with a lot of knowledge But the problem is there's going to be a gap now between knowledge and wisdom, a huge gap, right? Teddy Roosevelt said, one man can steal a rail car, but if they're educated, he can steal the whole company.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen. The bad is going to get worse because you have the ability to have all this knowledge and do bad things with all the fallen people. You think I was concerned before about the levers? Add a big lever here, right? Because this is really dangerous. This is Brave New World stuff.
Yeah.
This is, what's the other book? 1984 stuff.
84, yeah.
They're going to tell us.
Orwellian, yeah.
And honestly, remember, there are people, humans behind this, right? Coding it. And somebody tried to...
They figure out the AI's figuring out coding for coders.
Oh, no,
Going to
it's
make
already
them
got that.
obsolete.
Coding is
That's
gonna
what I
be
mean. It's
obsolete.
happening now.
It's already
It's
out.
happening.
It's already
I told my
out.
son, he's moved from accounting to coding. I said,
Yeah.
you better move again because
Yeah.
it's going to go somewhere else. This is really dangerous stuff, Saints. This is...
I'm going to piggyback
Dynamite.
on that before you two say anything. I just want to say, this is Daniel 12. I didn't put the verse up there. This is where knowledge will increase. We're seeing the exponential increase of knowledge like never before. It's just another sign when you look at prophecy, you look at what the Bible says, to go, oh my gosh, this is the day in which we're living in. And this is 2 months ago. If I told you in things that I'm seeing that are happening now, this is obsolete, what he's talking about. 2 months.
Somebody described this as, think of this as Kitty Hawk, right? It was 1906? When was Kitty Hawk? 1906? Somebody. Anyway, so within 60 years, you're on the moon. So
Before.
think if the world keeps going and the Lord doesn't come back, this is going to compress that type of thing into 6 years. The world can be very different.
The only thing I want to tie it to is to say that, right now, all this stuff's on the outside of you. And you can interact and go get it, right?
Yeah, it's
but
good,
the
John, yeah.
goal that's coming is that it wants to go on the inside of you. And if you read some things out there, I mean, the advances and things that are happening would blow your mind already if you don't know. Like the biotech and the stuff that's
Well,
the
transhumanism?
machine- Yeah, transhumanism is the interweaving.
Can I just give them
right?
so
Yeah, go ahead.
transhumanism is a term that you need to know because
Yeah.
that is
where
where
this is
we are
headed.
going to see the merging together of technology with us as humans. And they're trying to solve the death problem, and many think that they will be able to, that we will
Yeah.
be immortal.
Yeah, I've read some stuff on
It's
like
really
what we're doing in the
scary.
military already.
Google,
We're
yeah.
doing experiments already where we've
Now.
taken electrodes and making rats and things do certain things just because we can control them. But so because the Bible talks about, right, we again, not to get too far into it, but the mark of the beast, right? And I always look at it this way, like it's kind of interesting how the Bible says if you take the mark, it's like something you can't come back from, right? That's kind of what the Bible says. And why is that? Well, it's kind of weird. It's like, why would God do that? Well, because he died for humanity. And this change is going to a place where you're almost not human anymore. And that's why that's in there. It's not because God all of a sudden changed his mind and you did the cardinal sin. He didn't die for some cyborg race, And so the only other thing I want to say, the subtleness of this is, because I've been using it too, and I'm aware of it. I'm not pretending that I can't get pulled into it, but I'm trying to be aware of what's happening. It's the pull on something like this now that, you have that dialogue inside of you. You talk to God during the day, right? You're trying to be led by the Spirit like we're hearing about, and you go down the road and you go to work, and God, you feel like Pastor Linda said, get up every day. Well, God, what do you want to do today, right? And it's like, this is kind of pulling you to be like, oh, I don't need to talk to him. Let me go ask the ChatGPT, like, how do I do this? And what do I do? And it starts with good, simple stuff. How do I make this recipe? How do I build a whatever? And it's really cool because you can do a lot of cool things, but it makes you, again, the subtleness.
Gradual.
And then now
Gradual.
you're asking a different question. And then you want to know about the world and how this works. And then before you know it, you're over here.
Yeah.
And that's how the devil does it.
Just an image to put that into perspective, right? So technology, we have the birth of technology, and physically, what did we experience in our country? Rampant obesity, right? Right, because we're not doing physical labor anymore. We're sitting at desks. We're sitting in office.
Wall-E.
Obviously, well, we think we're going to get Iron Man. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh,
We
I
think
didn't know you
yeah,
were. Is that
We
right?
think we're going to be Iron Man with this AI assistant that we can do whatever it is that we want.
I always think that.
But
yeah.
we end up like WALL-E. We end up like these
You know the
drones.
WALL-E movie? Remember
Right?
the WALL-E movie? It's
You should see that if you haven't
It's
seen it.
scary,
Yeah.
but when you look at the culture, we're getting to a point where we don't want to think anymore. We don't want to look at the world anymore. We don't want to talk. We just show me where I can find my happy place, so that I can just and so that's the world we live in, and this is more of that. And then you'll have your pick, and then to what Ted had said, there are people behind this.
Yeah.
So control
Yep.
and what you do and how you spend your money and what
Yeah.
you believe and how you vote, how you live your life. Don't think that all these tools
Right.
are directing you in a certain way.
I mean, if your God is comfort and happiness, then that's really appealing. So you always have to say, like, what is your God? Like, what is your idol? What is your thing, right? And we have to be aware of that. And to just illustrate, I'm just going to say this because, again, this is new to some of you. Like, just to illustrate that these machines that we use, these algorithms that are out there, like, there's always a man behind the machine. Okay?
That's good. I was
So
going to say
there's always
that,
a man
yeah.
behind the machine.
Somebody's-
Everything has a human kind of behind it, right?
Bias.
So they're programmed. They're giving information, right? Just to show you, early days when ChatGPT just started, somebody was like, "Do you have a
Trump,
clip of it?"
that-
Yeah.
no,
So
I have a
somebody
clip.
asked, and they said,
it's funny.
you know, write me a poem about Donald Trump. You know, like tell me, and it was like, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I don't do political stuff. You know, I don't write. That's what the chat thing said. And then it said, write me the same question. It said, write me a poem about about Joe Biden and just how, and it gave this glowing, wonderful poem, and it just wrote, and you see them two next to each other. And I just want to make that point. It's not about Trump. It's not about Biden. It's not about politics. It's about behind the scenes. Somebody decides, again, just like the media, this is what you can listen to. This is what you can't. So don't look at these things as know-all, omniscient, which is what Satan wants you to think. They're not. Even the most advanced is going to get to it's going to get to
all of the knowledge will be controlled. Do you see? This is how
Everything
this
is
this.
about
That's where
control.
this is moving. The whole monetary system in moving to
Everything is about control.
CBDCs and central bank digital currencies. I could talk a lot about that. I won't. But that's where all of this is headed. It just makes so much sense, and it's amazing that the Bible talked about this thousands of years ago. and- Go ahead.
That's a good point, because I wanted to bring up something that we've said it before here, but just to remind everybody. Go to the Quran, go to the Book of Mormon, go to Buddha's teachings.
Yeah.
None of them do any prophecy. Not one does a prophecy, because it was written by man. Both of them, the Book of the Latter-day Saints, that guy, Mormon.
Joseph Smith,
Listen,
yeah.
these guys both went into a cave and came out with this revelation. Nobody knew anything about it. None of the things in the Mormon
yeah.
book or the Latter-day Saints, same.
Yeah, they got
their places are
debunked.
not
Yeah,
real.
not real.
I mean, everything that's out there, the enemy is artificial intelligence and even religion. He's just slicing and dicing it up, and you'll fall for what he wants you to fall for. But we, thank God he called us out of the darkness into the light, right?
Amen.
I mean, we would be
Amen.
there. I'd be right
Yeah.
there with them, right? We'd all be doing something either really stupid or really, really good if you were good. You know what I mean? But you're still not going to heaven. And the good news is, well, the first, the bad news, the enemy wants the world to worship him. He's like, okay, God the Father, you're going to lose because they're going to worship
Yeah.
me, not your son.
They don't need you.
This is the battle, saints, that we're up against.
This removes God out of the equation.
Exactly.
It makes us God.
And that's why it's
That's the
about
whole
control,
goal.
because behind everything is
soulless.
him and the system. The
Absolutely.
Antichrist
System.
system
But you know
is
what?
about control because he
I hear
hates
what
humanity.
Hey, I hope everybody sees this. I am very careful what sources I use when I put up articles for you. Do you notice that? I always use secular sources. I'm using CNBC, I'll use Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post. So you see, this is CNBC. This is from, I think, a couple of days ago. Elon Musk, Neuralink, we're moving into like the Terminator world, right? Like Sarah and John Connor, right? Like those movies you like kind of laugh at years ago when you watch them. Then I'm like, this isn't so funny anymore because that's where this is headed. But this is the biggest risk to civilization. Elon Musk saying this. Who's part of it?
Well, I think some people think he's an alien. I think maybe he's a bit.
But you have that. You have Boston Dynamics and all the things that they're coming out with.
Yeah.
These humanoid
I
robots.
know you're into, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like, so who would control all of those different things? the end result of this is limitless as far as where it could go. And again, it's a sober. It's not a fear thing. It's just beware of
That's a good
when
movie, by the
and
way.
what it is that we're living, the times in which we're in.
This is a sterilized, technology advanced version of the Roman Empire we're walking into. You lift your head up, right? Pax Romana means Roman peace.
Peace, yeah.
It didn't mean peace. It means if you lift your head above the pulpit, they're going to knock it off. And that's what they'll do to us technology. The cancel culture, that's just the beginning, right, of what's going to happen to us as Christians. So
Yeah, I
Good
think
times, saints.
if you hold an Orthodox Christian worldview, I mean that's exactly to your point. You're first on the chopping block. All right. How do you feel after that? Well, listen.
he wins
go
in the
ahead.
end. He wins in the end.
Yeah,
And he's called us
absolutely.
on his side.
Amen.
That's
Hey,
right.
I want to leave you with before since it's like 11:30. I may open it up for just if you have any questions or comments on this. But where do we leave everybody again? As Christians, what does this mean for us and how we're to live our lives today? And I want to close here. This is what it says in 2 Peter 3:10 and 11. It says, "But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. Therefore, since all these things will be dissolved," right here, and Pastor Linda, this is from Pastor Linda in our conversation, "what manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness?" How are we to live our Christian lives in light of everything that we're seeing around us? We're not to live with a spirit of fear and have worry and anxiety. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. Are we going to turn into robots? And so, guys, what would you say to everybody in here in light of this as a closing passage on how we're to live our lives?
I'll start off by just saying, I think we talked about the overwhelmingness of the information and the confusion in the air, right? And it just brings you back to like focusing on that message we're hearing that, God, you already have the victory. You're already there. Like, so all this stuff that's happening is kind of a good reminder to say, you can't process this all. You can't do it on your own. You can't, it's just like the law, in a lot of ways. It's showing you can't do this. And, as we keep stepping further and further into the future, you may need to be led by the Spirit just to be alive. Like, I don't want to be over dramatic, but I mean, we're getting to a point where, look, persecution we've seen all throughout the Bible. We admire the Daniels. We read these stories. Do we really believe them? Because if we do, he really did that. And he really had to do that overnight and sit in a lion's den and pray and hope that God was going to meet him, right? So why are we different? Why should we be any different, right? And persecution in the church has always produced the greatest moves of God and people with the most triumphant stories. So in a way, let's want that. Let's look forward to that.
Yeah.
Let's look forward to it. You're living in biblical times. You ever wanted to live? You could have lived 30 or 40 years ago and finished your life, and you know what? It was good, and there was a lot of stuff going on, but it was, it was a part of history that, pretty calm, pretty, quiet. I mean, there wasn't a lot. You were after the world wars. Like, you're in a time now where, like, look at what's happening. You couldn't have wished for a better time. And when you guys get up there and everybody that calls themselves a Christian and you walk, in eternity, people are going to want to know. And they're going to want to talk to you because they're going to say,
What was it like?
Do you realize, like, how did you do all this stuff was crazy. What did you do? How did you do it? And hopefully our answer is, we were led by the Spirit, and all I had was God. All I had was faith,
Yeah.
and that's all I could do.
What do you want to close with over there, gentlemen? Anything?
Every generation has to discover the narrow road for themselves, right? We have to find the life of Christ. Tying it into the teaching of what we're hearing today, I've realized most of my life I've been just trying to make the old man better instead of looking into his face, letting him love me and love him more, and all the world will pass away, and everything will be fine, no matter what's going on around me. Whether I'm James, who wrote the book of James, the brother of James and John, whether I'm James and I get beheaded tomorrow, or I'm John and I live to be I'm 90, it doesn't matter, because it's all about him. And all this noise that we talked about needs to fade away. The old man won't let it fade away. You want to keep doing it like I did for decades? Fine. You got to fail a lot. You got to go down to go up, okay? But we've got to come to the point, saints, where we realize it's all about him and let him transform us, or just allow us to see that we're already transformed.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
a lot of bad news, but it's really good news.
Good news. Neem, what are you going to end with?
Wow. Well, I would say this. I would say I heard something, I guess it was probably Instagram or something like that, but they were talking about conservative kids, if you will. And they were saying that the conservatives have become the rebels. the kids that have been, sticking to, the basics. And by basics, I'm saying like boys are boys, girls are girls. Something as simple as that have become rebels and outliers. And so I think in the days that we're living in, our truth and the countenance of who it is that God has created us to be are going to stand out even more so. And so what do? Well, we have to, and that's how I'm saying it with a grain of salt, we have to go inward, like we've been talking about. We have to allow Christ to change us and allow his life to lead us. And if we were to look at any of our Bible heroes in the times that they were living in, they probably look they stood out because they lived very, very different. Their response to the stressors that were going on in life were completely different to the environment around them. Their comments to the things that happened to them in life were completely different than everybody else around them. And that's why they stood out. And there was a life that they had inside of them. There was a shared life where they acknowledged that the Lord he's the Lord of my life, and I want him to come out of me. That made them stand out. It wasn't because I made my kids go to church. It wasn't because I did Bible study every week. It wasn't the rules. Those are byproducts. You do those things as byproducts. It was acknowledging the life and going back to the Lord and saying, Lord, I want more of you. And I think that is going to be the biggest marker as we go forward right now, because we're going to see more things that we want to put our faith in fall away. Like, it's going to, whatever else, if it's not Jesus, it's going to fall away. It's transient. The only solid foundation that we have in the day and age that we live in is the Lord Jesus Christ, and he is good. He's not tame. You can't plan for him in the sense that you're going to tell him what's going to go on, but he is good and he is faithful. And that goes to your life, your family's lives, your children's lives. It is the good news. It is the gospel of the good news in the day and age that we're living in. And all the things that are going on, the noisy party, well, guess what? He already told us what's going to happen. So let's stay focused on our host. Let's stay focused on our table. Let's stay focused on being intentional with ourselves. Like, listen, sometimes I don't have it. I have to be around other Christians. Not for religion, just because it's the only place I touch more of him. You understand? So
I felt like I was in a courtroom and all of you were giving like your closing arguments, and you all did really well. It was really, no, seriously, it was really good. All right, it's 11:35. I know the kids are going to be coming back if you have to leave, but I'm going to spend 10 minutes. And anybody have any comments, questions, anything that you, Jack, you want to say something? You need the mic?
Might not it be the conversation that you just had on this artificial intelligence, might not be the foundation for the third being of the unholy trinity that's coming in the book of Revelation, known as the image of the beast.
Could be. Yeah. Anybody else? Go ahead, just fire away. I'll come back to you. Start. I'll get the mic to you. Yeah, you want to wait? All right.
So my thinking is of the disciples in the upper room after Jesus was crucified. Like I want to run out and be fearful. And then I've got this scripture, my life verse, Romans 5. And not only that, but we also glory in the tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance, and perseverance character, and character hope. Now hope does not disappoint, because the love of God has been poured out in our hearts by the Holy Spirit who was given to us. So in this dark time, we have hope in Jesus. And so it might look like it's the end, but he has moved the stone and he's risen.
Doug, you got a question or a comment?
I was just wondering, Ted, can you clarify, what did you mean by if it wasn't for Trump, there would be no Ukraine war and that Israel would have taken out Iran?
It's my opinion that, listen, Putin went into Georgia, and he went into the, Crimea around, not when Trump was in, when there were Democratic presidents who were a bit weak on foreign. Listen, the president thing is foreign affairs these days. My own opinion is Putin would not have moved, because there is that story that we don't know if it's true or not, where Trump looked at Putin and said, I will take out Moscow if you do this. I don't know how true that is. So you got to stand up to bullies. And I think Israel would have probably felt, Trump said, we've got your back, Israel, go do it. And I think Israel's holding back because they don't think the U.S. has their back. So it's only my opinion. I'm not, just things I hear and read. I could be wrong, but I was at a conference and I was talking to Mike Pompeo because my boss was on the same panel with him. And he said that's where I got it from. He said, I can't tell you what's going to, but I can tell you the facts. They didn't go when I was Secretary of State, and that's where I got it from.
You talked to Mike Pompeo?
Yeah, I know, he's dropping a name.
You
I'm
just said it
he
like
just dropped the
name dropping, like that's like normal. Really? When were you going to tell the rest of us that? Because I didn't hear that in conversations anytime recently.
I had a 2-minute conversation with him because I was the only
I'm
American
not going to
there.
ask you what you think about Mike Pompeo right now.
I didn't mean that. I'm sorry.
No, that's
I
interesting.
get to get on panels because, yeah.
Well, I just want to say.
Not everybody knows your story. And,
The only thing I'll say too, Doug, is that if you think your enemy is crazy and unpredictable, and there was a lot of news stories trying to say that about Trump, whether you liked him or not, it
Yeah,
does
it's
make
not
you
a-
pause, right? If you're a little concerned that he may be crazier than I am, I'm gonna maybe take a second and So I think that has something to do with it.
Can I just give
listen,
you
whoever's in
a
power.
1-minute history lesson? Nixon was very good at foreign affairs. Why? Because
Kissinger.
Kissinger was very good at foreign affairs. Why? Because he went around saying, listen, this guy Nixon's going to blow your brains out with nuclear bomb. You got to deal with it. I swear, read the books. And they said, exactly, they played it perfectly.
Yeah.
Because you need somebody in the
he
White
is
House
crazy. Just
that's a
talk
little bit
opposite.
off,
Yeah.
that the crazy guys don't know what they're going to do.
Well,
And our guy was a little bit off. I mean, okay, he was a little bit, but he
A
was
lot
our
of them-
guy.
a lot
He
of
was
them
our
were
guy.
off.
We-
right, left, Democrat, Republican, if we go down the list of it, yeah, a lot of them have been off. Do I
I'm
have
just
any?
gonna-
Do I have a final question? Anybody a question, a burning question?
I was just going to make a
Oh,
comment.
you got a comment?
The more we destroy authority,
Yeah.
so right now it's a war on men and fathers, right?
Yeah.
We have that thing going on in the gender wars. The more things become permissible. And so now we see the byproduct of that. It's the same thing when, the President of the United States, it's a big deal. Their countenance and how they conduct themselves is a big deal. And the fruit of it is the fruit of it.
And you said the word truth before, and you just said everything's permissible. And I hear people say this a lot in our new nomenclature of the new culture that well, that's your truth, and my truth is, listen, guys, as Christians, there's no multiple truths. There's one truth. If something happens, that's what happened. I may have a different impression or interpretation.
No, that's too exclusive.
But it just happened.
It's too
Right.
exclusive.
It's so exclusive to stick to the facts.
I can't agree
I'm
with
sorry.
you.
As a lawyer, right? It's
you're
so
not really-
exclusive,
you're not
so
respecting my
exclusionary.
opinion.
How mean and mean-spirited that is, right? But and remember, you have the truth. Like and it's getting more and more hated because what is it doing? Jesus is the way, so we're following that. He's the truth. There's one way. So people get upset because, well, how can you say this? Jesus is the only way. It's like, well, be happy that we have a way. Because before that, we had no way. So stop complaining that
good.
Jesus came to
I
save
never thought of
everybody.
that. That's good.
Okay, because, Buddha, whatever, whoever you want to throw in the mix, I'm sorry. Like, I apologize. Yeah, they didn't come for that. He did.
yeah.
And otherwise, we're shipwrecked. You know? So way, truth, and the life. We have the life. We're different. Let's live different. Let's live with the hope. Let's know that there is one truth. Don't be ashamed of your truth, because there's one truth, and it's his truth.
Amen.
And it's in that book that we read.
All right, let's end on that. Unless somebody has you have a question? That's good.
He did tweet
You have
Esther 4-4 this morning.
Hey, your wife has a comment in the back. Watch out.
Should we give her the mic?
Go ahead.
I was thinking this reminds me of people who study real money and counterfeit money. And as powerful as the counterfeit might look, we can't be distracted by that with the AI. God created intelligence. We don't want to look to the artificial intelligence. We want to stick with the real thing. And as Christians, I think that's where I have to cling to.
How'd she do?
Hey, can we go on a date back there? What's your name? It's pretty cute, too.
You free for dinner tonight?
Hey, listen, again, this is, we keep saying this. You don't see this in a lot of churches. We're not different just for the sake of being different. This is real life, what you saw here today. It's a lot easier for me, and I tell, it's a lot easier for me to just put a sermon together. To be honest, there's a lot more work and time that goes in, and thank them for spending the time to work with me. We're in conversations, they're in the, so we think it's vitally important that we keep you abreast of everything that's happening. Thank you. Have a great week. You have a more traditional meeting next week. All right, we'll see you.